The brand new banners for Genshin Impact version 4.6 have been revealed, and they are not bad, I guess. Welcome to Jello Impact, where we build and test every single character to help you decide who you want to wish for and build. As usual, we are going to talk about the 5 stars, the 4 stars, and of course the weapon banner. It is a very Fontanian weapon banner, Catalyst standing out like a sore thumb there. I gotta get something out of the way right away. The 4 stars, they're not that great. I think Auroron is a pretty underrated character, especially if you happen to wish on the previous weapon banner with Shalon and Venti, the one that's on right now, and you happen to get yourself an elegy for the end. Auroron is a pretty good character. You already got him though for free in the last patch if you played that event, which of course you should have. Scroll character, electrocharge buff. He either needs to be run with Natlin units or with electrocharge teams to get his Night Soul state going, to proc the Scroll of the Hero Cinder City artifact set to give that 40% damage buff. But when you can do that, and that is a lot of teams, he is quite good. Of course, we have Eonsan now, but in my testing, a lot of the teams didn't perform all that much worse with Auroron instead of Eonsan. So like, if you end up with a bunch of constellations of Auroron, you don't have Eonsan, Auroron's a great replacement. Sure, he's not as powerful, he's not as peak, but he's very easy to use, and like I said, especially if you happen to have elegy for the end, he is a really good character. Aoife is a brand new character, so a lot of people are going to be excited to get him. We talked about him before. He's not super great. If you get C6, he does have the best electrocharge team in the game. It is with not Eonsan, it is with Auroron and Farina, and I think the last unit being Yelan. And it is the best electrocharge team in the game. It is better than Sucrose. It's still nothing to write home about, but it is like 36 starable. I will test it. I have pre-farmed for Aoife. I will be doing a first impressions for these guys right away, so look forward to that for sure. It's going to be much faster coming out than my previous ones. I'm going to do a first impression and then a full teams meta analysis later on, so that way you guys get a video of the first impression sooner, because to be honest, my first impressions are usually correct. I've done this a long time now. I've tested a lot of characters. I have a pretty good idea of how strong they are after first impression, so we're going to give you the first impression much sooner than before, so make sure to subscribe if you want to see that. We're almost at 100k. Every single one helps. And then we've got Layla. I love Layla. She is super cute, one of my favorite designs, but she's not super meta. She's not very good on like any teams anymore. She used to have a bit of a Wanderer niche, bit of a Melt niche, I guess, bit of a Mono Cryo niche. Basically, none of those are basically used anymore. And with a Scafier, she's basically never used ever. For the overworld, having a shield, having that cryo application, that's pretty solid. I guess she's not like the total worst as like a budget Scafier partner. She does provide that shield, and you can just forego everything and build damage on her, because on Scafier teams, she does get decently buffed. I will try a mono cryo type Scafier team for like the non-Farina havers, for like Scafier, Shenhe, and maybe Layla. You can put her on Harbinger of Dawn since she's an HP scaler, and with between the healing and her shielding, she should stay above the 90%, so she can get that Harbinger of Dawn buff. And with Shenhe's quills and Scafier's buff, maybe she does some decent damage. I'm not holding my breath, especially as a Farina replacement. You're losing out on all the damage buffs you're getting for everything else. Maybe run Farina and do like a quick swap, whatever, with Layla replacing Ayaka. Sounds mega cope, but with how strong Scafier is at a baseline, and with Layla being able to proc Shenhe's quills and building a lot of crit rate and crit damage, I could see it clearing and feeling pretty much all right. So, you know, not a lot of account value there, but in terms of a fun new play style, something could be happening. And I don't believe I have her C6, so I'm pretty excited. I think I have her C4, so I'm pretty excited to get her C6. I have almost no constellations of Auroron, and I don't have any constellations of Aoife. So this is an awesome banner for me personally. I don't know about you, but I'm pretty hyped to be wishing on these banners. So those are the 4 stars. Auroron is a good meta replacement to Eonsan, and sometimes he is better. He's good on Kaniche teams. He is good on like Moika, Chevru's teams, especially with Clorand, or just with Moika as the main DPS. He's good on, like, he's all right with like Chaska, but you prefer Yansan, and he's got some other stuff too. So he's all around just a pretty solid character, pretty good character to have. Layla not so useful, Aoife not so useful, but at least he's new. So on the whole, they're fine. But don't, for the love of Archons, do not wish on banners for the 4 stars. Just don't. Don't worry if they're bad. Don't get excited if they're good. You can never guarantee them. I've made tons of videos on this. It's a total crapshoot. Wish for the 5 star. Worry about the 5 star. You can get them guaranteed. Remember, the average cost for a 5 star is the same as getting like 2 copies, 2.5 copies of a 4 star. By the time you average out a C6 4 star, you've gotten yourself basically 3 copies of a 5 star. So much more worth it to zero in on the 5 star. So what 5 stars are we talking about? We've got Navia and Scafier. I've made a bajillion, mamillion, gajillion videos on Scafier, and she is awesome. If you play Cryo or Hydro characters, you can strongly consider getting a Scafier. She does really, really want Farina. If you don't have Farina, I know like 80 to 90 to 95% of you have Farina. If you have Farina, getting a Scafier kind of just opens up a new world of carry, like wheelchair teams, where you can just throw Cryos and Hydros onto the team, and Scafier will just carry them to the high heavens. So honestly, I haven't really said this on a video before. I think it's kind of cool to just get a Scafier if you have Farina as like an option for your account. I don't think a lot of people are saying that. It's like they're saying if you have Ayaka, if you want to get Skirk, if you have Novelette and you have Citlali free, and yeah, all that's true, all that's true. But if you're looking to build fun teams and expand your roster and have more options and strong options, getting a Scafier is like not a bad option. Like if you've got some pulls to throw and you're tempted, getting a Scafier is really strong. All of a sudden you put her with Farina and you put another 2 characters there that are Cryo or Hydro, and all of a sudden you've got a pretty darn good team, especially if you have a Yulan or Shenhe kicking around. But even if you just use Xingqiu, like there's gonna be lots of stuff you can do, and she's gonna open up team options for you. Sure, not as valuable as Shalona, not as valuable as like a Bennett, but really gonna open up some options, especially we're looking in the future. We've got Skirk coming up. If you're considering Skirk, you're probably going to need a Scafier. I just made a video on that. You can check that out. Skirk is probably going to be very tied to a Scafier, to the point where you should almost consider just getting a Scafier, even if you're not sure if you'll be able to fund Skirk, because of how reliant Skirk might be on a Scafier. But you can wait until more pre-release information is out before you wish. You can always hold off. Look, I'm not telling you to go out and get her. I'm not trying to hype her up. I'm not saying you need a Scafier, you should get her. I'm just saying she's going to open up a lot of team comps, and if you're into that, you might also consider her on top of all the other teams that I've already talked about being good with a Scafier. I think she's going to be great. And of course, if you're on the fence, wait for my first impressions video. That should give us a lot more clarity. Overall, I'm really excited. We've also got the Cryo Archon. Cryo Archon probably won't be for a while though, so I would hesitate to wish for a Scafier for the Cryo Archon, because next year we're getting Nod Cry. We're not getting Shenhe Nahida. I wouldn't be surprised if the Cryo Archon didn't even use a Scafier. I wouldn't be surprised if she used a completely different support and didn't even work with a Scafier at all. I would not be surprised. So don't get a Scafier thinking you need her for the Cryo Archon, but as long as you have Farina, I think getting a Scafier is a pretty solid pull if you get tempted or if you have a plan. But I don't think she's a must pull. I don't think you need her. But she's definitely the character I've been most excited about. And no, I don't hate Natlin. I love Mualani. I love Kaniche. Moika is ridiculously strong. Shalona is ridiculously hot. I like Varessa. I get distracted playing Varessa in the overworld. You know, Natlin characters are awesome. Don't love Chaska. Don't love Moika's bike. Love her design. Don't love her bike. But pretty much everything else is good. Love Citlali. Great design. Great character. But Scafier does it for me in a totally different way. Okay, we're gonna move on. Navia. I love Navia. Navia Moika dual DPS is so much fun. Everyone's tired of hearing me talk about Moika, but Navia Moika with Bennett Shalonen is just so much fun. It's so good. If you have that, like, and you love that, like, you don't even need to get Citlali. I know it's obviously way better to have Citlali, but this team, it doesn't rely on getting your melts off. You get to shine with both Navia and Moika. It's like a true dual DPS team. It's even more true dual DPS than Clorand with Moeka. The team just makes me so happy, and it fixes Navia's issues, which are she doesn't have enough to do that's really impactful on field. She's kind of like a quick swap carry. So having Moeka be a dual DPS exactly complements with what Navia needs. It's perfect. And no other character really does it for her the way Moeka does. Sure, you can run Navia, Farina, Bennett, Shengling, or Bennett, sorry, Chiori, or Albedo, or Kachina, or Shalona. There's lots of different options for Navia. She has lots of flexibility. You don't need Moeka, obviously. I like her plunge stuff with Shalona, with Chiori, Farina, Shenhe, or again, you can use Kachina, but her strengths are just really nicely accentuated by Moeka. It's not even Moeka carrying the team. It really is that dual DPS. I might do a full video on Navia. I did put out my Ask Jello screenshot. If I have time to get to Navia before she runs, I will do my Ask Jello Navia. I just haven't been able to do it with busy family stuff right now. But she has lots of options that can clear the abyss. I will say, if you don't have her signature and you don't have, like, I don't know, serpent spine at a refinement, it can be like she scales on just raw stats. So if you don't have good artifacts, if you don't have her signature set, if you don't have her weapon, things can get a little bit worse, right? Like, I have a really good artifact set. I have her signature weapon. Her constellations are kind of bad though, keep in mind. Scafiers are good. So like, she is like a high investment character. So if you get Navia, be prepared. She's also not a meta character, so she's not like a top DPS. With her Navia Moeka dual DPS team, I do put her in along the lines of the higher tier DPS, which is along the lines of Kanich and Chaska and Mualani. I put her in that group, and Clorand in that category. Not as good as the Moekas, Novelettes, Varessas, but she is in that good group, but she's not great, and she's not mid either. She's sort of a high tier DPS, but you have to really invest into her. And then she does become a bit more mid if you're not using the Moeka stuff, but that's most of the characters in the game. So that's how it is. Weapon, banner. But also, again, I am talking meta, right? I am talking meta. If you're looking at this character and you're like, oh, Imaginarium Theater, Geo character. If you're looking at this character and you're like, oh, I love Navia, I just want to make a cool team, player in the overworld. She is very flexible. She has lots of teams, lots of different stuff you can do. Even if you're not super concerned with meta, she's really fun. She's not like super burst reliant. Good character, right? Same with a Scafier. She's going to be amazing as just like a general casual pull. Both of them are, right? Okay. Weapon banner. Interesting weapon banner. It's amazing for Navia wanters, I think. Let's look up the Symphonist of Sense. They did reveal this a couple days ago. Didn't make a video on it. It is a crit damage substat. So pretty good amount of crit damage, pretty high base attack, increases attack at a baseline. When the equipping character is off field, attack is increased by an additional 12%, so it's better for off-field characters. After initiating healing, the equipping character and the characters they have healed will obtain the Sweet Echoes effect, increasing their attack by 32% for 3 seconds, which is honestly pretty huge. So this is obviously amazing for Scafier, increasing her own attack, which increases her damage and her healing. The crit damage increases her damage, obviously. And then she gives herself a further attack buff by initiating healing for 32%, by initiating healing and further attack buff for herself by 32%, and buffing the on-fielder for 32%, which is a pretty darn high amount. 32% is like getting close to a Sans. Like, that is a pretty darn high amount. This weapon is going to be huge for Escafier's teams, and it looks amazing. You definitely don't need this to make Scafier good. Scafier is an amazing character at Constellation 0 with just, you know, the death match or with just Skyward Spine. She does want a high base attack weapon. I talked about it in her build guide video, which I made, so you can go check that out. But this weapon is going to be really big for her teams. And on top of that, it is also best in slot for Chevre's team. So Clorand is getting a buff after all. All Chevre's teams are getting a buff. Are there any other Claymore or polearm healing characters? So Chevre's, it's a new best in slot weapon for Chevre's. It's just across the board, right? It's gonna buff Arlecchino, Varessa, Clorand. It's just a buff across the board. New best in slot for Eonsan, kind of. Eonsan does want a ton of energy, so it's a little bit questionable that Eonsan will be able to do it, but she does give healing. So there you go. Huge for Mika. Mika does really want to use Fav usually because he has huge ER requirements, and so does Eula. So, kind of like the downside for both Yansan and Mika, but Chevreuse doesn't really need ER, so it's great for her. Anyone else? Yao Yao could work for Yao Yao. Attack buff, she's usually used on Dendro teams, which want EM, not as much attack, but could still be best in slot. And then Zhongli, if you have C6, no one should have C6. But if you do, then Zhongli's healing will make... will allow him to buff further, and he doesn't need ER. Although I guess you kind of need ER because it's his burst. No, it's his skill that gives healing. Yeah, so that's kind of funny. That's kind of funny. I like that. Navia, the verdict is like a solid stat stick for other Claymore characters. It's obviously Navia's best in slot. It's a gorgeous weapon. For drip impact, both of these weapons are like 10 out of 10. Worth it just for drip. I got Navia's just for the drip. It was before the days when I decided I was going to get everyone's signature weapon, which to this day, I would love to just use 4-star weapons, but I need the drip. It just, the character to me doesn't feel complete without their weapon. I'm sorry. I wish I could do it, but I'm too much of a slave to the visual appeal, and without the drip, they just don't look the same. Like Navia without her axe to me is just not the same. I'm not trying to sell you on the weapon. It's just how my mind works and looks at these characters. And I do this for a living, so I have to look at these characters a lot. The other weapons are sort of kind of more just cope, right? Widsith is good, but I hate it with all of my passion. The resetting passive is so annoying, RNG. The bow is like fine. The sword is an HP like fine. It's fine. It's not that good. It's like, it's a fine like substitute for Nilou or Layla, but like they prefer other stuff ideally. Prospector's Drill is like a fine option for a bunch of characters. It's fine for a Scafier, gives a bunch of attack, and then this drill Claymore is badass, but it's not good. I'm not going to go through all of these because you're probably not going to get them R5, and they're not really worth it over other 4-stars if they're not R5. So it's just like kind of a waste of time, and they're kind of, they're just not they're not good. They're sort of like DPS centric weapons, and like, sure, the occasional account may be able to utilize them, but for the vast majority, you're either going to have 5-star weapons that are just completely outclass these, or you're going to have 4-star weapons that outclass them. So it's not really worth going through each and every single one, but you can check out like Keqing mains, the website, and look at your characters and see if any of these weapons are mentioned on any of them, and see if they're ranked higher. I also look at Keqing mains for my guides. You can also check out my guides for the same thing, just to see if your Claymore character wants this Claymore somehow, or Prospector's Drill or whatever. So overall, as like a general pull, I mean, the pole arm is like kind of okay for generalistic. Like, it is a stat stick, crit damage, right? Crit damage plus attack. Even if they're not healing, it is crit damage plus attack. So like, it's not a bad stat stick on the whole. And same with the axe, it's a high base attack with crit rate, and it's like an alright stat stick. They're both alright stat sticks. Now that we have Moika's weapon, it's a way better stat stick than the Claymore. So this weapon banner is kind of better for Navia, but the fact that the weapon banner is only 1 pity now instead of 2 makes this worth it if you've got enough characters. If you've got enough characters, if you're happy with your characters, you can consider these weapon banners. Is a Scafier better off getting her weapon or her C1? So her C1 gives 66 crit damage to CRYO characters, and her weapon gives 32% attack, plus giving her more personal damage. My gut tells me they're going to be pretty darn similar, because on a bunch of teams, the C1 is not going to be useful as well. And at least this crit damage, although the 32% attack may not always be worth it for someone like Novelette, the 32% attack does work for herself. So she's getting a really big buff. Granted, she does get the 66% crit damage. I think especially if you don't have a good weapon for a Scafier, the weapon is going to be better. I would say in general, the weapon is going to be a little bit better than her C1. It's both more flexible, and it's probably around the same strength. I think it might even be a little bit stronger. Her personal damage is really, really good. So getting all that extra attack, all that extra crit damage, whether or not it's overall better probably depends on what weapon you currently are coming from. If you're coming from, like, if you don't have Deathmatch, you don't have another 5-star stat stick, I'd be surprised if the weapon wasn't better. But if you already have like Staff of Homa or something, then I could see it being a lot closer. Plus the weapon's actually cheaper. So I would personally go for the weapon over her C1, but for certain accounts, the C1 could be better. And then for Navia, her weapon is better than her C1. Her C1 gives her like more energy or something really bad, and like lowers her burst cooldown, it's really not good. So her weapon is where it's at, and it's her C2 that gives her more crit rate, whereas you could just get a little bit more crit rate from her weapon. So yeah, I think that's this banner overall. Get the character you like, worry about the 5-star, don't worry about the 4 stars, don't get constellations or weapons until you're done getting all the characters that you want. And then when you're going for vertical investment, I'm leaning towards the weapon for both of these characters. Then you can consider Scafier constellations and completely skip on Navia constellations, unless, no, it's just not. She's not the best constellation character. So that's it. Let me know your thoughts. Subscribe if you haven't done so already. And if you don't want to do that, that is totally fine. Just watching the video has been more than enough. Thanks so much. Bye for now.